we're bringing you an exclusive private view of the Citi Exhibition, Arctic Culture and Climate, which is currently on display at the British Museum. For those who don't know, the British Museum's permanent collection of some of sort of 8 million objects is amongst the largest and most comprehensive in existence, having been widely collected during the era of the British Empire. It documents the story of human culture from its beginnings to the present. First opened to the public in 1759, the British Museum was the first public national museum in the world. In this event, we're going to get a glimpse of one of the current exhibitions on display at the museum. It's not quite the same as being there in person, but it truly is the next best thing. The Arctic, often imagined as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, has been inhabited for nearly 30,000 years. The various communities that call the region home have found ingenious ways to harness and celebrate their environment and to coexist with its wildlife. Today, man-made climate change is transforming the region at an unprecedented rate, bringing with it a new set of challenges. This exhibition explores the history of the circumpolar North and its people through the lens of climate change and weather, drawing on a wealth of objects, artworks, and voices from past and present. We're going to begin with a video of the exhibition before we hear more about some of the objects on display.
I'm Jago Cooper. I'm head of the Americas at the British Museum.
And I'm Amber Lincoln, a curator in the Americas section at the British Museum.
Welcome to the Citi Exhibition, Arctic Culture and Climate. In the Arctic, climate change isn't a distant threat in the future. It's the lived experience right now. There are places that are melting for the first time in human history. And this exhibition is about the lives and experiences of the people who live there.
At the heart of this exhibition is decades of collaboration with Indigenous Arctic people. Jago, Peter Louvers, and myself have worked with hunters, herders, scholars, political advisors, seamstresses, storytellers on this exhibition, and we're particularly grateful that they've been so generous in sharing their knowledge.
To really understand the Arctic, you need to do what I'm doing now. Stand on top of the North Pole and look down at the world. When you see the circumpolar North from this perspective, you start to understand some of the connections between the different places. From the Nenets of Siberia to the Inupiat of Alaska, from the Sami of Northern Europe to the Inuit of North America. These cultures are incredibly diverse and have their very own histories, but there's one thing which bonds them together. What I'm standing on is the sea ice, and that's melting at an astonishing rate.
Ice is also access to bountiful worlds. Andrew Kopic's There's Another One beautifully captures the rich life underneath the sea ice and its significance for people who rely on that life. And this is as important today as it was in the past.
When we think about the problems and solutions of climate change, it really needs a sort of fundamental rethink about how we live with the planet. If you conceive of the planet as a sort of finite set of resources that those with the power and technology can exploit for their own gain, then that's a difficult place to start. The Arctic is the complete opposite of that. People are an integrated part of the ecosystem. They're part of a living world and just one small, humble part of it. This translates to the aesthetics of art itself. Throughout this museum, you see these big marble monuments, iconoclastic objects of power. But the value of what art means in the far north is completely different. So this fish skin bag, translucent, ethereal, created in the 19th century, captures this understanding that when you take an object, the value and beauty of its creation is in how you respect the environment from which it came. So if your starting point is thinking about the environment in a completely different way, then it changes everything about your relationships with it. Take hunting, for example. You might think that hunting and the success of hunt is based on the technology you have or the skills as a hunter. But in the Arctic, that's not the case. It's the choice of the animal, who they wish to give themselves up to. And they do that based on the personality of the hunter, their soul, and the aesthetics of their tools. Take this world's first wetsuit behind me, which was used to go out hunting whale. This is an object that had to be perfectly created in order to justify the killing of the whale. And these practices, these ideas continue throughout the Arctic today. So if you take Brian Adams's photograph of Marie Rexford from northern Alaska, Brian is an Inupiat photographer, and he's capturing the continuation of these practices with the whale blubber lying down ready to be socially shared after the success of the hunt.
For Arctic Indigenous people, the weather isn't something to be resisted or overpowered. It's something to be used. It's a tool to be harnessed. So for instance, seamstresses who make the wonderful clothing and footwear that make life in the Arctic possible have a knowledge of weather. They use particular forms of, they use particular temperatures, humidity, and seasonality in order to tan and the hides used to make clothing, such as the gut skin parka that are so essential to hunters and others for traveling and staying dry. They tan the gut skin in a deep freeze, the coldest part of winter, to get this very opaque white with flexibility. This is weather knowledge that people use. In frozen climates, icy seas, being able to predict the weather is essential knowledge for hunters and reindeer herders. In conversations we had with hunters in Shishmaref, Alaska, for instance, Delano Barr explained to us how he learned from his grandparents and father to predict the weather. And they used the stars, they used the color of the sky, they observed animals to see how they were behaving. And this was essential before hunting through kayak, for instance. You needed to know the swell of the waves. Was the ice coming in? Unfortunately, with global climate change, these generations of knowledge, of patterns of weather knowledge, is made obsolete as global climate change is making weather patterns alter so significantly. And hunters like Delano Barr have stressed that we all have to adjust ourselves to the weather. We have to make changes.
When everything started changing due to global warming, oh boy, that messed up everything. The way of thinking and the way we live, because our ocean would be completely frozen by October. I mean, with this climate change now, it's still summertime in October here, up here. And we're near the Arctic Circle. We're just a few miles south of the Arctic Circle in Shishmaref here.
Many people don't realize that the Arctic has been populated for more than 30,000 years. People were living in the far north long before Britain was repopulated after the last ice age. And these people in the far north have lived through big changes before. And what we see from their technologies, from the things they leave behind, is their amazing ability to adapt and develop new technologies. One of the reasons we know so much about Arctic prehistory now is that these objects are now melting out of the permafrost due to climate change. Here we see some objects from some walrus hunters living in northern Siberia around 1,500 years ago. The beautiful intricacy of the walrus bone and ivory shows how these people were creating objects using materials traded in from the south. You can see small pieces of iron are hafted in the adze heads. This essence of the Arctic, this ability to adapt to large amounts of change, to innovate with new technologies, these are essential skills that people in the Arctic need today.
Like their ancestors before them, Indigenous Arctic people have used these same resilient strategies, adaptation, innovation, and collaboration, to manage the rapid social, economic, and political changes of the last 300 years. These have been the result of European exploration and the Russian annexation of Siberia, and the colonial stories and histories that came after that. Some of the earliest encounters between Inuit and European explorers, for instance, were violent, such as Martin Frobisher's encounter with Inuit of Iqaluit in 1577. But others have shown an incredible amount of collaboration as these well-adapted local people shared their knowledge. For instance, with Ross's crew in the 1830s, there's a depiction by Ross himself of two Inuit men looking at a chart and explaining where the Europeans were at the moment and giving them local knowledge. And in turn, the Europeans, who were often ill-equipped for these harsh climates, were incredibly impressed with the innovative technology and the use of resources that many of the people they encountered had displayed, such as this early Inuit sled from northern Greenland, which is made and remade from many different materials, driftwood, antler. And what's amazing about this sled is that you can see the reuse of the material. So everything was so efficiently saved and kept that, you know, a crossbar would have been reused for a bow drill, for instance, and then reused into something else. And you can see the evidence of that when you look closely at this wonderful sled behind me.
This is an Inukshuk. An Inukshuk is a place marker in the landscape, and you can find them throughout the far north, created by the Inuit. This particular one is one built by Peter Louvers, who's from Naujat in Repulse Bay. After many years of discussion, Peter came over to London and went down to a quarry in Kent, and then took out some Kentish ragstone and built this Inukshuk right here in the British Museum. In a way, they act as markers or places in landscape that can connect up the geographies of London and the far north together. And when you hear Peter Louvers talk, for him, they act as symbols of resilience, symbols of knowledge that are passed down through generations and that remain to today.
Inukshuk is a really good way to learn about Inuit culture, Inuit customs, and Inuit traditions. Because, as I said, Inukshuk is a symbol of survival for Inuit since many, many thousands of years ago.
Since Arctic Indigenous people are on the front lines of global climate change, they're also leading the way in raising awareness and finding solutions to the problems affecting their communities. We've asked 2 Indigenous Arctic organizations to curate this section: the Shishmaref Erosion and Site Expansion Coalition and the Inuit Circumpolar Council Alaska have brought 2 major issues that they're dealing with to the visitors here in London. Shishmaref, a low barrier island, is rapidly eroding as a result of fierce storms. They are working to prevent being some of the first climate migrants. The Inuit Circumpolar Council of Alaska is working for food securities. Some of the problems that come from climate change also include the melting of the permafrost, invasive species, increase in contaminants. This is affecting people's food systems. And of course, being able to continue to hunt and gather and fish is really important to people. So what's amazing about these organizations is that they're relying on some of these same strategies: adaptation, innovation, collaboration, that their ancestors have used for a millennium. Atigit Silapat, the beautiful printed parkas above us, were created by young kids in Kinait and Pangerton, Nunavut, who are inheriting a warm Arctic. They've been working with a group of artists out of Toronto, the Embassy of the Imagination, to reflect on climate change and the experiences of changing environments around them. They are calling for reciprocal global action and solidarity during this time of transformation.
Most exhibitions at the British Museum are about the past, but this is an exhibition which is really about the future. We really hope that you'll come along and listen to the stories being told by communities in the Arctic, and look at the incredible objects that have these narratives of living in a time of dramatic global change.
There we go. Fantastic introduction to the exhibition. We are absolutely delighted to be joined by Dr. Peter Louvers, who is the project curator of this exhibition. He's also honorary research fellow at the Department of Anthropology at the University of Aberdeen. His research specializes in human-animal entanglements in the North. I'm going to ask him more about what that means, human-animal entanglements. But Peter, if you want to share your slides, and then you can begin taking us through this journey of exploring a few of the objects that you've selected from this exhibition.
So good afternoon, and thank you for this invitation. Reciprocal global action and solidarity during this time of transformation. As my colleague Dr. Amber Lincoln was citing Embassy of Imagination just before in the video. So in this presentation, I'd like to explore a little bit what this might mean in terms of climate change and sustainable living. Like the curatorial tour by Dr. Amber Lincoln and Dr. Jacob Cooper, other British events presentations have highlighted several striking objects to address themes of culture, weather, and Arctic indigenous peoples' livelihoods. And so here I would like to share a few other more, between quotes, obscure objects to talk about climate change and teachings of sustainable living that are paramount for Arctic indigenous peoples. In that fashion, I again want to acknowledge our indigenous collaborators who are really key in this exhibition, and teachers. And personally, I say hi Cho to my Gwich'in teachers with whom I've worked since 2005. So Arctic objects are infused with notions of sustainability. The Gwich'in elders with whom I have worked, for example, have taught me that Gwich'in would use all parts of the animals. There's a great concern of waste and disrespectful relations with the animals, plants, weather, celestial bodies, ice and snow, to which their lives literally depend on. So I gave you a little bit of time for this object, and hopefully you will be curious about what it is and thought about different things of what it might be. Well, so one of these objects that could be overlooked or not receive much attention in the exhibition is in fact this drinking tube, a straw, made most likely from bird bone, I think swan bone. This predecessor of the plastic straws was made by Inuits around Igloolik, so this is Nunavut, northern Canada, before 1825. So it's well over 100, well, almost 200 years ago, really. William Edward Parry, a British imperial officer, a naval captain, had collected this on his journey to find the Northwest Passage. The drinking tube would have been used by Inuit hunters whilst hunting seal on ice in springtime. With the melting of snow and ice, small pools form on the ice, and the hunter can suck in the slushy or clear water. This drinking tube, however, also offers insight in how Arctic indigenous people understood the material properties and anatomy of animals, and used this vast knowledge to use every animal part. Parry, the British imperial explorer, must have been captivated by this ingenious design, and one might imagine him trying it out either in Canada or maybe on his way journeying back to London. With the present rapid climate changes, hunting on ice have become more challenging for Arctic peoples. So I recall how in the curatorial tour, Delano Barr was referring to these changes that he experienced. Moving away from birds and seals, caribou and reindeer play significant roles in the lives of many Arctic indigenous peoples. In the exhibition, there's one showcase devoted to reindeer herding, for example. For Gwich'in, like other Arctic indigenous peoples in Alaska and northern Canada, caribou are essential for clothes, food, spirituality, and well-being. Whilst there is a different sense of proximity between reindeer herders and caribou hunters, the intricate knowledge of them is somewhat similar as this beautifully crafted wooden alder wood caribou figure by the late Inuk elder George Flowers from Northern Labrador, again Canada, illustrates. His daughter-in-law has shared with me through email how he hunted caribou, and these experiences translated in these figures that he sold to support further hunting expeditions. I can't resist always to include something about the Gwich'in. There are two Gwich'in objects, but I've been having worked with Gwich'in, so this is one of this Gwich'in summer outfits. Beautifully. So Gwich'in elders have mentioned that Gwich'in share a piece of the heart with the caribou, and vice versa. And for that reason, caribou know what Gwich'in think. Disrespectful thoughts or actions, and words as well, lead to bad hunting luck, and subsequently sickness or even death. With climate change, caribou and reindeer are also experiencing drastic changes on the land. The permafrost is melting and sinkholes are appearing. I have noticed these large sinkholes on the land that interrupted both rivers and caribou trails that have been carved in the land over hundreds of years. In Russia, in the Yamal Peninsula, Nenets reindeer herders suffered a great deal when anthrax came out of the melting permafrost in 2016. Thousands of reindeer died, and with them broke the spirit of a number of Nenets reindeer herders. Changes have also become in different shapes, as captured so eloquently in Joseph Sanunculuk's Yesteryear's Seasons, which is a woodcut print, juxtaposing the traditions of whaling, both for Inuit, Inupiat, and Norwegians. And the Norwegians at one stage owned Alaska Whaling Company in the early 1900s, just to set aside. Juxtaposing this traditional whaling with the advent of the Alaskan oil boom, Sanunculuk underscores how outsiders have come to dominate Arctic indigenous lives with resource extraction initiatives and environmental policies. These events also led to the advocacy and establishment of land claim entitlements and international organizations such as the Inuit Circumpolar Council, and Amber was referring to them. Inuit and other Arctic indigenous peoples have often collaborated or assisted in these events. Crucial here, as Sheila Watts-Coultier alluded to in her presentation at one of the Arctic Exhibition events, is that Arctic indigenous peoples are in control of these changes and initiatives. As Sanunculuk's woodprint illustrates, the tradition of hunting whales, both as means for spiritual and physical well-being, is something that's at the heart of deciding how Inupiats approach these events. Changes, however, have a long history. This beautifully carved object, alone from Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, showed 27 different faces. It's not quite certain what purpose the wand had, and this one is around 600, 800 AD. Perhaps the unknown Tunuit or Dorset person exemplified different human emotions, or perhaps the wand was a shamanic tool, as Dr. Amber Lincoln writes in the exhibition catalog. Inuit stories recount the existence of an ancient Arctic peoples called Tunuit. These Tunuit, who were predominantly sea mammal hunters, were large, extremely strong, but very shy and easy to flight. Inuit historians mention that the Tunuit did not speak properly and were considered less intelligent than the Thule, who are the Inuit Arctic ancestors. Archaeologists now have argued that the Dorset people and Tunuit are the same. The name Dorset comes from the excavation site. Cape Dorset, or Kincaid, now as it is known, where anthropologist Diogenes was brought to the attention objects that looked different from the Inuit. So Diogenes concluded that they must come from a different culture, which then was named Dorset after Cape Dorset, which in return was named after 1600s 4th Earl of Dorset by an European explorer. The Dorset, or Tunuit, people moved roughly 4000 before Christ BC across from Siberia to North America. By 2500 BC, they became more sedentary and settled in larger communities across North American Arctic, including Greenland. Here, the Tunuit would craft intricate and often minuscule objects from walrus ivory, of which this object is one. Eventually, and in certain ways abruptly, the Tunuit were displaced with the arrival of the present Inuit ancestors. By 1350 AD, the Tunuit had all vanished. Archaeologists and Inuit historians suggest a warmer climate and territorial competitions for resources with Inuit ancestors might have caused this demise. The Tunuit, the Thule, were much more aggressive and not shy to use force, quite the opposite of the Tunuit. The intensification of Tunuit art might have been a response to this, as lead curator Amber writes. The Tunuit requested the spirited world for protection against these newcomers. The warming climate, too, could have been a disadvantage to the Tunuit, who would have been finding it difficult to adjust. So, sorry, if you see, like in the center of this bucket, like the closest to you on the rim, there's this little, like, we call like a little bomb or something, like a little pimp. That also is a straw car. So there's this little straw carved into it. So you could drink slushy water out of it. So again, an example of this ingenuity. So let me conclude indeed with one of my favorite objects. And we're showing two of these kind of buckets, but I'm showing the most decorated one. And this bucket brings the themes back together. This water bucket from Tasiilaq in eastern Greenland. The wooden bucket, exquisitely carved with whales, seals, and narwhals by a Tunumuit carver, so not Tunuit, but a Tunumuit carver, had both a spiritual and a practical purpose. The wood came from driftwood and the ivory from walrus that would have been hunted. The Tunumuit carved different buckets, with some less decorated as this one. The bucket would have been filled with snow and placed inside the house. The water bucket, however, too, would have been used for ceremonial purposes, to give water to a hunted animal. The bucket also tells a more tragic story of the disappearance of animals. By the 1880s, when this bucket was collected by a Danish imperial officer, seals had disappeared due to climatic shifts. So the freezing up of the islands had resulted in changing habitats. Now, at the start of this presentation, I cited Embassy of Imagination's call for reciprocal solidarity for social transformation. Arctic indigenous peoples, as the objects in the exhibition tell, are at the forefront of this transformation. Not because they become, between quotes, modern, but because, as the woodprint yesteryear season captures, or as this water bucket shows, the past is pivotal in future living. Collaborations with others, like in the Arctic Council or in Inuit's Circumpolar Council, are crucial. And here they are also involved in resisting contentious relations. Sustainable living, in which respect for the land and ice, for animals, for celestial bodies, for the weather, for other beings is at the heart, is a lesson that we could all take away. Understanding animal properties and making use and reuse of all these parts certainly could be a way forward, as Arctic Indigenous people have shown so clearly. So, and for those interested to learn more, there will be an event on Thursday, this Thursday, entitled Inheriting Climate Change. For more information, please visit the Arctic page of the museum website. And in this event, younger generations talk about their experience and solutions for climate change. And this includes indigenous people, which I mentioned before. They have been pivotal in this exhibition. So thank you for this.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. Thanks so much, Peter, for sharing those selected objects with us. We've got time for questions. We've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. And actually there's loads and loads of questions. I'm going to start with a few of them. So Andrea Derry has said, how did you work with the Arctic people in this exhibition? Tell us about the sort of process of learning together, followers of local and traditional knowledge and academic disciplinary knowledges. So yeah, how did you put this together? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, great question. So both Amber and myself have, as anthropologists, have worked a long time in the Arctic. So firstly, we built on our existing relations and working with the elders that we know so well. So that was the first part of it. Then moving forward, we commissioned several pieces from Arctic Indigenous people, those we didn't know. So you have Peter Louvers that you saw, who made the Inukshuk. Then there's Fedor Markov from Siberia, who made a mammoth ivory festival. He was the second part. It was the one of 1860s, and he made like the missing part of this model, and that model is hosted in the British Museum. So he made that one, and then the Embassy of Imagination that we both referred to me in the video. Beyond that, we also incorporated a video. So, and also the photo that you saw, right, of the Umiak by Kili Yuyan. We also include well, his photography and then also his videos. More so, even when we were setting up the exhibition, we have a costume, a Sami costume. So when you come to the welcome section, there's this one costume that was made for an Englishman, a racehorse owner, yeah, a big guy. And together with me and my colleagues, I showed this to a Sami lady, Anna Mayole, who's the director of a Sami museum in northern Norway. And I understand a little bit how important clothes are for the Sami people. They are essential for their identity. So she saw certain things, like the way how the boots wrappings were, and so she gave my colleagues Helen and Sam via messages and via contacts instructions how to do it properly. So this was a very neat kind of co-curation that was really essential, because yeah, we really want to get things right.
Yeah. Just building on that question, Vicky Grandin is asking, is there a council that gathers all the different communities of the Arctic Circle to discuss issues and share concerns?
Yes. So the main one is the Arctic Council, and Arctic Council is quite an interesting one. There are 6 different indigenous organizations that include the Inuit Circumpolar Council, which encompasses all the Inuit people, and that's again interesting because the Inuit they literally live across the circumpolar north, across the Arctic, except for Fennoscandia. So you got, even in Russia there are Inuit, Siberian Yupik. So that, and then you got the question, and then you got the Alouettes, and then 3 other organizations. And this Arctic Council meets with stakeholders. So they meet with all the Arctic governments, so the 8 Arctic countries, and they have a say in the policies that are going around in this in the international domain.
Yeah. You know, when you go to when you watch climate change conferences and things like that on TV and in the news, you see your Greta and you see your David Attenborough, but very rarely. I mean, maybe I've missed it, but I've never really seen voices from the Arctic talk about their concerns. Is there a reason why that's not being shown?
No, well, I think it's the both maybe in ignorance of or an ignorance or a dismissal of indigenous knowledge. So you get a lot of people would say, okay, it's important to include indigenous knowledge, but then exactly what you're saying, this inclusion doesn't show in people's voices actually being heard. So it's like a kind of footnote. It's like a necessity to do, but not taken seriously.
I mean, that animation of the snow just melting away on the North Pole. I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very frustrating because I think, and I hope that this Arctic exhibition kind of challenges these notions and really puts these indigenous voices to the front.
But we've got a question from Ruth Buckingham who says, what are the main lessons we can learn from the Arctic communities in order to tackle the significant and urgent issue of climate change facing the world? So, okay, if they're not attending these climate change conferences and voicing, is there another way we can take lessons from them and learn from them?
Yeah, well, I think through these ideas of sustainable living and using all parts of the animal, respectful relations with the land, with ice, with the animals, with the weather, but also with other people.
Yeah,
it's they put in a lot of emphasis, for example, on words. That words are very well, we notice it now in America, for example, right? That's just a sidetrack there. But words, they are powerful, and this can reflect in what we have seen, like things we are familiar with, but also in terms of the animals that are being hunted. So if you are talking badly about an animal in a similar way as you talk badly about another person,
yeah,
has an impact on your own life or those of your family. The animal does not give itself to you, so you literally can grow hungry or die. Like it can really do serious. And then like this example of the straw, for example, I think is a beautiful example of animal parts or ways of things that we could use, moving away from plastic, or making making your own things, building your own materials, or reusing materials, like Amber was referring to this sled. And if she had not included the sled, I would have, because it's such a beautiful example of this, understanding material properties, the weather, and also reusing different tools.
Well, it's upcycling, right? It's a good example of upcycling. A few questions about the objects themselves. So the straw, someone's asked, how big is the straw? I know we talked about it before the event went live, but roughly 20 centimeters, did you say?
22.4 centimeters to be precise, yeah.
Okay, 22.4 centimeters, fantastic. Another question from Sophie Buda is, what sort of wood is the deer-like animal made of?
Alder.
Alder wood. Okay, fantastic. And another question is, the 27-faced object looked a bit like a tooth. What is that one made of?
I think this one is walrus ivory. Walrus ivory, and then really drilled and carved out.
Yeah. What's your favorite object in the exhibition, Peter?
Well, my favorite it's,
One question, I know, but I have to ask it.
Where am I? I think it must be the Christian costume, just to be that one, and there's this one, the one I showed now, and then there's this one print by Putlo Putlat in Inuit's drawer of a seal, 2 seals, and a loon. And I don't know, it's just that object always makes me happy. It's very colorful. But and then this water bucket as well, just because of the strikiness and the story behind it. And
That's
then
fantastic.
a little straw. I mean, that's just
yeah, it's brilliant.
Ingenious.
Well, Peter, you're a wealth of knowledge, and thanks for taking out time to share some of that with us. But you've got a book. There you go. You've got a book by Thames Hudson with the same cover as we've used in this, and you know, people can find out more. The exhibition does end on the 21st of February, and though there is a chance that we might be able to see it if the restrictions are lifted slightly, but if not, I know that there are plenty of really wonderful resources and videos and podcasts and blog posts and many things around this exhibition on the British Museum's website. And the event you mentioned on Thursday, people can find out more from the website. But look, thank you all for attending. A big thank you to our guest speaker, Peter Louvers. Dr. Peter Louvers. Thank you to the British Museum for putting on this amazing exhibition, really important and timely exhibition. A special thanks to Ella Fansett for making this event happen. So thank you so much, Ella. Everyone, please do take care. Look after yourselves in these days. And before you leave, do feel free to leave some feedback for us. Let us know what you thought of this event and what other kind of events you might want to see in the future from the Knowledge Quarter. So with that, thank you all so much.